Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible? Hello? Hello? Only Prosenjit is visible on the screen. Are you there? Hello? Please unmute yourself and respond. Hello? Hello, Prosenjit? Hello? Hello? Am I audible? Hello? Only Prosenjit and Ankona is visible on the screen. Anyone please respond? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is the previous class ended or? Okay, we will be starting in next 5 minutes. Just we are waiting for other people to join. Hello, so good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we'll be starting our topic. It is vitiligo. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, today our topic of discussion is vitiligo. Basically, vitiligo, in our day-to-day practice, every day we encounter with cases of vitiligo. So at least you should know, even if you are not a you don't become a skin specialist in future, but still you should know something about vitiligo, okay? For exams purpose and for your future life, okay? Now, vitiligo can be defined as an acquired pigmentary anomaly of the skin characterized by depigmented white patches, and it is usually surrounded by a normal or a hyperpigmented border. So this disease was described long time back in the history of mankind. Even the Roman physician Celsus was the first one to use the term vitiligo in the 2nd century. Even in India also, we have mentions of vitiligo in our ancient books, and it was named as kilas, meaning the white spot deer. Few previously also, even nowadays also, sometimes we'll find people confusing vitiligo with leprosy, because many people think it's a variant of leprosy and it is known as Sveta Kushta. That's why so much of social stigma is associated with vitiligo. Even if it is non-contagious, it is painless, it does not cause any harm to the body, but still lot of psychological pressure occurs on the patient because of the society and other issues. Even while getting married also, there will be a lot of questions, because getting a vitiligo patient married is also very, very difficult. So now vitiligo, basically, if you go for the histopathology of a vitiligo, you will find that there is loss of epidermal melanocytes. One moment. Yes. So it is characterized by the loss of epidermal melanocytes. Now, what happens in here in this case is that there is autoimmune destruction of the melanocytes. Basically, it characterized ultimately leading to loss of melanocytes, and you will find hypopigmented spot in earlier period and depigmentation you will find in the later period. Now, basically, the prevalence of the disease in other countries is about 0.5 to 1% in most of the countries, but in India, it is around 8% in some of the areas. What is the reason for the difference in incidence is maybe that because of the darker races, the lesion becomes more visible in our case, whereas in case of white people, the lesion becomes less visible because of amalgamation with the skin color. Basically, vitiligo occurs in the childhood or even in the young adulthood. Now, generally, we find the peak incidence in the 3rd week of life, but 50% of the cases begins before the age of 20. Okay. Now, regarding it is actually, even if you go for a clinical acumen, you will find that vitiligo you will find as early as patient giving in a newborn baby, or it may be found in as old patient as 80 years old. Now, regarding the prevalence among male to female, actually books say the prevalence is equal in case of male and female, but if you go for statistical analysis, হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ,
মিট করবেন না, এটাকে এন্ড মিটিং
একটা অ্যাটেন্ডেন্সের ব্যাপারে তো আছে। Just a moment, please. Yes. So regarding the incidence among male and female, basically, actually, if you think rationally and think from the biological point of view, the male ratio between the male and female should be same in both the cases. But statistically, if you find, you will find more number of female patients reporting to the OPD because or reporting to a doctor because of the cosmetic issues. Now, let us classify vitiligo. Type of vitiligo, it can be localized vitiligo, it can be generalized vitiligo. Now, in case of localized vitiligo, these are again three types: focal vitiligo, segmental vitiligo, and mucosal vitiligo. And generalized vitiligo, acrofacial vitiligo, vitiligo vulgaris, and universal vitiligo. Now, clinically, vitiligo basically presents with ivory white depigmented patches. Earlier stages, it may not be that depigmented. Initial stages, it will be slightly hypopigmented. Then gradually, as the disease progresses, the grade of depigmentation increases, and finally you get the ivory white patches in the full-blown cases. Sometimes you will find intermediate tan zones. That means the lesions, you will find lesions in a same person, you will find both hyperpigmented lesions, hypopigmented lesions, and depigmented lesions. So this particular entity is known as trichrome vitiligo. Later on, I'll show you pictures of that. And this vitiligo, if it's extensive, it may involve the depigmentation of the hair also. And you will find white hair on the lesions. This condition is known as leukotrichia. Now, vitiligo can be of various sizes and configurations. Generally, in the usual case of vitiligo, the margins are smooth and convex. You get a scalloped margin. But in case of segmental vitiligo, you will find the outline may be irregular. Now here, as I was telling you, on my right, you can see a picture of a boy. He is having vitiligo near his eyebrow region, and you can see the amount of white hair he is having in these areas. So basically, this is leukotrichia. And on my left, here is another picture of a vitiligo. You can see three types of skin color. In the center, you have a complete depigmented area. Surrounding it is little hypopigmented, and again surrounding it is the hyperpigmented or the normal skin color. So this is an example of a trichrome vitiligo. Now, the most commonly affected site is face, upper part of the chest, dorsal aspects of the hand and feet, axilla and groin. It can be periorificial. Periorificial means it can involve the mouth, it can involve the genitals, it can involve the areas of trauma, which are in the knees, elbows, and ankles. And also vitiligo, you will find Kobner's phenomena. Now, what is Kobner's phenomena? Kobner's phenomena is the development of lesion at the site of trauma. So the trauma can be anything: wearing a pressure garment, wearing a belt, it will be wearing a watch, or maybe there's some sort of injury, maybe burns, or so these sort of lesions can ultimately result in vitiligo. Now let's come to the case of universal vitiligo. As the name itself is suggestive, more or less the entire body surface is involved. Very few areas is left behind, which is actually pigmented, and the rest of the body is depigmented. And usually in these cases, you find a symmetrical distribution of the vitiliginous lesions. So this is the next slide. You can see an image of a person suffering from vitiligo universals. Okay, so you can see the widespread involvement involving all of the upper part of the chest, even it's extending up to the abdomen. You will find discrete lesions involving both the hands, arms. Let's come to the second variety, that is the acrofacial vitiligo. Now this particular, as the name itself is suggested, it's involving the face, it is involving the acral parts of the body. The other name for acrofacial vitiligo is lip tip syndrome. So lip, you can see from the name itself, is lip is involved, and it is tip of the digits. Can involve both the hands and the toes. Lip may be involved, tip of the penis is involved, vulva is involved, nipples may be involved. This particular acrofacial vitiligo is very resistant to very much resistant to treatment, because the main reason for this is that this particular vitiligo involves the hairless area of the area of the body. So when we'll start the treatment part, you will understand why this particular type of vitiligo is resistant to treatment. You can again have an image of an acrofacial vitiligo. Here you can see a person who whose face is involved. You can see the involvement of the lips. You can see the involvement of the hands. You can see the involvement of the toes. Okay, so this is a case of acrofacial vitiligo. So this is another example of lip tip vitiligo, where you can see both the persons involved with vitiligo, involvement of the lips are seen. Now let's come to the segmental vitiligo. So basically segmental vitiligo affects 5% of the adults and 20% of the childhood cases. You will find a dermatomal distribution in this case and may follow the lines of Blaschko. Now this particular segmental vitiligo may be monosegmental, involving only one area or one segment of the body, and sometimes it may involve multiple segments. And as I have told, it follows the dermatome or the lines of Blaschko. Generally, it do not cross the midline. And this particular vitiligo has got a very stable course. In initial stage, there might be increase of lesion, but gradually after some time, it becomes very stable. And this is another type of vitiligo which is very much amenable to treatment. Most of the cases of this particular segmental vitiligo is noted in the distribution of the trigeminal nerve. See, there are two images here. The image on the left side, this shows the image of a boy having a segmental vitiligo, mainly involving the forehead, his upper eyelid. Even you can see the involvement of the eyelashes also. Okay. The image on the right, this is an image of a woman who is showing vitiliginous distribution involving the chin area. To some extent, the cheek is also involved. Here you can very well see that this lesion has not crossed the midline. Now, let's come to the etiopathogenesis. Now, we exactly don't know what is the etiology. There are several hypotheses proposed regarding the etiology of vitiligo. The first theory is the genetic theory. So, in case of genetic theory, you have heterogeneous, complex, polygenic disease with environmental influences. Now, this is generally supported by that in case of vitiligo, about 20% of patients have a family history. Even very high incidence of vitiligo is noted among the consanguineous theory, consanguineous twins. So this is one of the documentation which supports the genetic theory. Now let's come to the autoimmune hypothesis. Perhaps this is one of the strongest hypotheses which is more supported by most of the dermatologists, and most of the dermatologists believe that the autoimmune process is the main reason for vitiligo. Now what happens in this case is that there is autoimmune destruction of melanocytes, and it is also noted how we do reinforce this autoimmune theory, because it's generally seen to be associated with other autoimmune disorders. There is presence of antibodies against melanocytes have been demonstrated, and if you do a histopathology in case of an early vitiligo lesion, you will find the presence of cytotoxic T lymphocytes. The next theory is the neurogenic theory. Now, neurogenic hypothesis, generally neurogenic hypothesis suggests that the vitiligo is present along the distribution of the nerves, which is reinforced by the presence of segmental vitiligo, and it is believed that some sort of toxin is released at the nerve endings, which ultimately destroys the melanocytes, and you get a segmental vitiligo. But very frankly speaking, demonstration of any toxic chemical released at the nerve endings is not yet to be demonstrated. Now, next theory is the biochemical theory, and this theory is perhaps one of the weakest theory regarding the etiopathogenesis of vitiligo. Some dermatologists believe that certain chemicals are released which destroys the melanocyte, and ultimately this destruction of melanocyte leads to formation of the vitiliginous lesions. Ultimately the main conclusion is that generally autoimmune theory and genetic theory stand the strongest, and rest of the theories are a little weak regarding the etiopathogenesis of vitiligo. Now, what are the associations? Now, vitiligo can be seen to be associated with several cutaneous disorders like alopecia areata, halo nevus, atopic dermatitis, morphea. Some endocrine disorders like diabetes mellitus, hyper or hypothyroidism, Addison's disease, pernicious anemia. Now you can see the case of vitiligo in patient of a alopecia areata. So you can see the scalp area where there is loss of hair and there is also acral vitiligo. Now this is another example. You can find vitiligo in case of a child having atopic dermatitis, and you can see the vitiliginous lesions present mainly on his cheek. Now regarding the differential diagnosis. Now, what are the differential diagnoses in case of vitiligo? The first differential diagnosis is albinism. So, as you all know, albinism is a congenital disorder where there is no formation of melanin. So, it can be of two types. It can be ocular cutaneous albinism or it can be ocular albinism. So, mainly this is one condition. But here, if you can see for the changes in the eye, which will give you a conclusion, which will give you rather to come to the conclusion that you are seeing a case of albinism, not a case of vitiligo. The next entity is halo nevus. I'll show you an image of halo nevus. This is an image of halo nevus. You can see surrounding a nevoid condition, you have a halo of depigmentation. Sorry, we had an interruption. Yes. So we were discussing the differential diagnosis. Sorry for the interruption. So regarding the differential diagnosis, as we were telling, it will be albinism, it will be halonevus, it can be a case of idiopathic gutted hypomelanosis, and even pyabaldism. Now we'll discuss about pyabaldism little briefly. It's another genetic condition where it looks exactly like vitiligo. The only difference between vitiligo and pyabaldism is that it's more congenital. It is not acquired as in case of vitiligo, and you will find a very characteristic white spot, a triangular white spot on the forehead and you will find a white forelock. And most of the lesions are located in the trunk, where you will find vitiliginous spot, exactly looking like vitiligo, but you may have few hyperpigmented lesion within the vitiliginous spots. Okay. Now, next is pityriasis alba, as we had discussed in the case of class of eczema, that this also presents with hypopigmented spot, mainly in case of children with atopic dermatitis, even without atopy also, which needs to be differentiated from early cases of vitiligo. Because in case of pityriasis alba, lesions are little lighter in color. They are not so much depigmented as in case of vitiligo. So early vitiligo sometimes needs differentiation from uh, pityriasis alba. Now next is pityriasis versicolor. This is again a lesion caused. This is again a disease caused by the fungal infection. Here also you may find hypopigmented lesions, which sometimes we get confused with early cases of vitiligo. Then you may have a post-inflammatory hypopigmentation after a superficial burn or some other tissue injury. So this may sometimes need differentiation from vitiligo. Now next is leprosy. Leprosy, mainly tubercular leprosy, early stages, sometimes present as hypopigmented spot, and we need to differentiate it from case of vitiligo. Then congenital conditions like nevus depigmentosus or nevus animicus, it can also be considered as a DD. If a patient presents with vulval lesions or a genital lesion, then sometimes chlorosis vulvi or BXO needs differentiation from the vitiliginous lesions. Basically, in case of chlorosis vulvi or vitiligo, you will find atrophy and you will find the skin is very much indurated. Whereas in case of vitiligo, the skin lesion is absolutely normal. Other than the depigmentation, there is no other change in the skin texture. Now, on your left, you can see an image of a trunk of a person. You can see very small hypopigmented lesions present. So this is the case of idiopathic gutted hypomelanosis. And on your right, this is the case of pityriasis versicolor. See, the color here is looking little lighter, not as depigmented as case of vitiligo, but when the vitiligo process is starting in the early lesions, it needs to be differentiated. Now, how do we differentiate? Very easy thing, very easy investigation can be helped as to diagnose pityriasis versicolor. You can do a Woods lump examination, and you can very simply do a fungal scraping and demonstrate fungal hypha to differentiate it from vitiligo. Now here you can see a case of Hansen's disease. See, you can see quite number of lesions present on the back of the person, and these lesions sometimes, if you are not aware, may give you a confusion whether you are seeing a case of vitiligo or not. Then how do you differentiate? You can do a look for sensory loss, whether it is hypoesthesia or anesthesia. You can look for the border, whether it's indurated or not. You can do a histopathology to confirm the diagnosis, or you may do a slit skin smear to confirm the diagnosis. The demonstration of AFB will help you to exclude vitiligo. So this is a case of albinism. So you can see the bluish color. You can see the whole of the hair is white. Her face is, the whole body is white, and you can see the color, the irish color. This helps in differentiate. This is a case of oculocutaneous albinism. Now halonevus, as I was showing you this picture. then you can see a case of pyebaldism. As you can see here, you have two cases. One is a young baby and another is a grown-up person. In both the cases, you can see a triangular white area on the face, just on the forehead, and you can see the white forelock, very characteristics of pyebaldism. So once you see a case of pyebaldism, you will never forget. And now, what are the poor prognostic factors? Because if you are treating a case of vitiligo, the patient is bound to ask you the question, Dr. Amiki Sharbo, this is a very common question you will encounter in your day-to-day practice, because you have to give assurance to the patient whether he will be cured or not. So, what are the poor prognostic factors which will help you to decide that how the treatment part is going to work? Now, if vitiligo occurs in the extremes of age, suppose a boy comes, a young boy or a very old person, then you can expect that the result of the treatment won't be very good. Then association with other autoimmune disorders. That means if the autoimmune process is very strong, then there is a chance that the person will not have a very good result with your treatment. If the extent of involvement, just 1 second. If the extent of involvement is very high, then also the response to treatment is poor. Now, the presence of leukotrichia. Now, how presence of leukotrichia will hamper the treatment process? Because generally, while repigmentation of the skin, if you are treating a case of vitiligo, that repigmentation occurs either from the border of the lesion where normal melanocytes are present, or from the hair follicles. The hair follicles which contain the melanocytes, they help in repigmentation of the case. So if you have leukotrichia, that means the hair itself does not contain live melanocytes. So in that case, you cannot expect to have a repigmentation very well. Then in case of lip tip vitiligo and segmental vitiligo. In case of lip tip vitiligo, these are the non-hairy parts of the body. So again, the same process. So since only the margins of the lesion will help in repigmentation, not the hair follicles. So again, the response to the treatment will be poor. In case of segmental vitiligo, and if the duration of the disease is very long, a person comes to you after 10 years of the disease or 5 years of the disease, so the chances of response to the treatment is little poor. So these are the main poor prognostic factors which determine the outcome of treatment. Now, what are the treatments which you can give? Now, see, as I have told you previously, that vitiligo has lot of social implications in our society. So because vitiligo as such, I have told you, it's not painful, it is neither itchy, nothing. No specific or systemic complaint is there, but patient will have a very mental anguish. He will present with lot of mental anguish, because this vitiligo not only sometimes leads to social rejection, hampering a marriage process, hampering job profile, hampering his day-to-day activity because of the social rejection. So counseling is very, very important, that with the treatment he will improve. Even psychological support both from the family and from his peer group is also very important. Prognosis has to be explained very clearly considering this treatment process. Okay. Now, how do we treat a case of vitiligo? Now, let us come to the medical treatment. Now, how do we treat? If the vitiligo lesions are very much limited, only a very small site is involved, 1 or 2 lesions are present, then you may start the treatment with a topical treatment. What topical therapies should we use? What we can use? We can use a topical steroid, because as I have told you, autoimmune process occurs. So if I can use a topical steroid, this will act as a local immunosuppressive and it will help the melanocytes to start functioning. So topical steroids can be used depending on the site of the lesion, depending on the area of involvement. You can select a topical steroid. You can give a cream base, you can use it in an ointment base, or if it's involving the hairy areas, you can use a lotion also. The potency of the steroid, one thing you have to keep in mind, because in case of vitiligo, the treatment has to be continued for quite a long time. So the side effects of the steroids should be taken into a consideration. Suppose you use a potent start your therapy with a potent steroid or a super potent steroid. Then after some time there will be atrophy of the skin, and so you don't get the desired results. So the selection of steroid is also very important. We will select what sort of steroid? We will generally select more or less potent steroid with less of atrophogenic potentiality. Then we can select calcineurin inhibitors like tacrolimus or pimecrolimus. We can start with the topical Soralen therapy. We can use placental extracts, even the decapeptide solutions. Now let's come to the systemic therapy. Now systemically, again, this question of extent of disease is very, very important. The duration of disease is very, very important. And the progress of disease is also very, very important. Because if a patient comes to you with rapidly progressive disease, then immediate stopping of the immunity process or autoimmunity is very, very important. So you can start your therapy with the systemic steroids. Basically, we dermatologists prefer steroids in a pulse therapy because that will help to minimize the side effects of the steroid. At the same time, you will get the desired effect. So you can start with a systemic therapy. You can start with levamisole. Levamisole, as you all know, it's a anti-helminthic drug, but it has got a immunomodulatory action. So you can start with levamisole. You can start with photochemotherapy, that is Soralen therapy or PUVA therapy. This is a very commonly used drug in case of vitiligo therapy. So Soralen, basically the use of Soralen has been started from the ancient India. Even we get in a mention of use of Soralen as a plant extract in our ancient books of Rig Veda. This particular compound, that is Soralen compound, in presence of sunlight helps the trapping of sunlight and it helps in synthesis of melanin. So photochemotherapy may be used. Then you can start with Kaolin. Kaolin is another plant extract which acts in the same principle as Soralen, which helps in repigmentation of vitiligo with the help of UV rays. Then you can use immunosuppressants like azathioprine. You can use cyclosporine, and a very new drug which has come right now in use of vitiligo is tofacitinib. Now, here's a schematic representation. You can see a PUVA machine over here. On your extreme right, you can see a machine of PUVA where instead of using, basically we use PUVA in two ways. In our setup, most of the people don't have the access to a PUVA machine. So what we do is a PUVA sol therapy. We give a Soralen compound that asks the patient to expose himself to sunlight after 1.5 to 2 hours. So this is known as PUVA sol therapy. But if you are in a tertiary care unit, as we have in our hospital, so you can have a PUVA machine where the patient will take this Soralen compound with food, and then after 1.5 to 2 hours, he will expose himself to ultraviolet light in this particular PUVA machine. So this is PUVA therapy. Now, what are the other modes of therapy? Now, suppose with all of your efforts that your therapy with systemic drugs or topical drugs fail, then you can start the phototherapy with the narrowband UVB therapy. This is a very promising method right now, which is practiced by quite a number of dermatologists, of course, with an access of PUVA machine. So here, a very precise dose of ultraviolet B light is used to therapy your vitiliginous patients. And here the important thing is that you can minimize the side effect of Soralen compounds, which occurs in quite a lot number of patients. Many people will report to you with contraindications of PUVA therapy, that is the Soralen compound. So in that case, you can try a narrowband UVB therapy. Now, after all your approach, the treatment fails, then you can ask the patient to go for surgical therapy. Now, what are the surgical therapies which can be done? They're tattooing. Now, you will select the color of the patient and you will select dye according to it. And along with that, with this dye, you will do a tattooing. But of course, it has to be used in very small areas. Very good results are seen in case of lips. So you insert the pigment with the help of a tattoo machine, and this will give a apparently normal appearance to the skin. But main side effect of tattooing is that, of course, the chances of infection, chances of transmission of certain communicable diseases, and one more important side effect is that after certain time, these pigments starts getting rejected, so there might be lightening. The next process, which is very commonly practiced nowadays, is skin grafting. Now, the criteria for skin grafting is that you have to have a stable vitiligo case. Suppose the disease process is active and you do a skin grafting of a normal melanocyte into the vitiliginous area, this particular the process will fail because there will be again rejection of this melanocytes as because of the active autoimmune process. But if a vitiligo is stable, that what is the criteria of stability? That means for last 6 months, there is neither increase nor decrease in the dimension of the vitiliginous lesions. So these patients are the ideal patients for skin grafting. You can do a punch grafting, you can do a split thickness grafting. Then you can go for a cosmetic camouflage. Very commonly practiced, you have certain chemicals or certain dyes available, which are mainly in a pencil form on a lipstick like appearance, lipstick like thing, and you can apply on the vitiliginous areas, and for the temporary camouflaging, the patient can continue with his day-to-day activity. Now, suppose a patient of vitiligo universalis comes to you. The whole of the body is white except 1 or 2 black spots. Now, for this particular person, this black spot itself is actually, as I have told you previously, the result, if the extent of disease is very high, then the result to treatment is very poor. Now, in this particular case, this depigmented spot is actually causing discomfort to him, psychological discomfort. Had it been all white, then he would have be accepted more easily by the society, and it's for himself also, it's very easy to accept. So what we can do is that we can depigment these active hyperpigmented or the normal skin, and so that it merges with the vitiliginous skin. So you can use certain permanent depigmenting agents like mequinol, monobenzyl ether of hydroquinol, which will lead to the destruction of melanocytes in the normal skin, and ultimately it merges with the vitiliginous areas. Now, this is an image of a person who has been grafted with a mini punch grafting. So you can see in the vitiliginous areas, small melanocytic punch, small grafts or small mini punch has been collected from other part of the body, same autologous graft, and this same person, the graft has been put inside the graft has been put inside the vitiliginous areas, and from these normal melanocytes, ultimately the melanocytes will start functioning and they will produce pigment, and it will cover up the whole of the vitiliginous areas. So basically, initially you may have a polka dot appearance, but later on this particular pigmentation will spread and cover the whole of the vitiliginous areas. Now, let's now come to leukoderma. Now, very frankly speaking, this term you will encounter in your everyday practice. People generally tend to confuse or tend to mix up vitiligo and leukoderma. No, basically leukoderma and vitiligo are little different. Now, the nomenclature is leukoderma means white skin. So any white skin is leukoderma. So, but vitiligo is a particular type of leukoderma. So, vitiligo and leukoderma are not synonymous. Now, here what you find is a case of bindi dermatitis. So, this is not vitiligo because though it is an acquired condition, there is a reason for this. But in case of vitiligo, there is no definite reason is found. So, here she has been using bindi, which is very common practice amongst Indian women. So, these bindis contain certain adhesives. They gradually damage the skin, and you may have this vitiliginous sort of lesions. Now the next image I shall show you is another, this is chappal dermatitis. So here also some chemicals are used in processing of rubber, and this particular lady and this particular gentleman has been used some chappal or even leather shoes also. These chemicals have damaged the skin and they have led to formation of this vitiligo-like lesions. So again here, this is another case where use of hair dye has led to certain chemical damage to this particular lady, and you can find vitiliginous lesions extending on her nape of the neck, on her scalp, and even to some extent on her face along the hairline. Okay. So thank you for your patient listening. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. So for today, let's work.
Hello, ma'am.
Any question? Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Asking something?
Yes, ma'am. Can oculocutaneous albinism be treated with therapy for systemic vitiligo? Means systemic therapy for vitiligo?
No. oculocutaneous albinism, there is no melanocyte. In case of vitiligo, at least you have a chance of getting repigmented. But in case of oculocutaneous albinism, actually there is no therapy for it. Only thing is the assurance to the patient he should avoid sunlight, because these patients are very much prone to develop malignancy as they don't have melanocyte, which has got the protective effect. He or she may turn up with malignancy, but otherwise oculocutaneous albinism has got no treatment. Vitiligo can be treated. This is a treatable condition, but oculocutaneous albinism or any form of albinism is not, because it's an enzyme deficiency. It's a congenital disorder. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, in
Yes.
skin grafting,
Yes.
we take the skin from the the affected person only.
Generally, we try autologous skin grafting. The same person, suppose the patient is having a vitiligo on his face, then we match the skin color. Most of the cases, we take grafts from the thighs and other areas, which will be less visible. What we do is that we may do a punch grafting. So what we do, we use a punch. We use a punch, we make a hole in the recipient area. There are two areas, the recipient and the donor area. And we use a punch size of, suppose 3, a bigger size punch, and we do a punch removal of, we put a hole in the vitiliginous area. Then from the donor side, we use a smaller punch. That means will be punch size will be suppose 2. It will be smaller size punch, and we take a sponge from that area. We take a portion of a skin and put it in the recipient area. And then we do the dressing and other things, so that this particular donor site from that cell from the donor sites, they get implanted in the recipient site, and actually they will start functioning and producing melanin. Okay.
So, ma'am, it won't show Koebner's phenomena. It's a kind of trauma. So,
yeah, it's of course I agree with you, but see, I have mentioned that it has to be done only in case of stable vitiligo, a vitiligo which has been stable for last 6 months. So if the disease process is active, if I do a grafting, yes, the Koebner phenomena will definitely destroy the melanocytes which were present in the graft. Okay, so it can be done only in a stable vitiligo where the disease process is absolutely silent. Neither there is a progress of disease nor there is a improvement of disease. That means the disease process is totally silent, and then only they are the ideal criteria for a graft patient. Okay.
okay, ma'am, thank you.
Anything else? Okay.